Hello, everyone. Thanks for all for coming. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things we've seen in trends over OT security. And for some of you who are new to it, yeah, it's cybersecurity and OT has been around for a long time. I always joke that I keep saying the same things for 26 years. When that stops being relevant, then I'm going to have to retire. But for now, here we are, 26 going on 27. We're going to talk about applying OT security learnings from other. And one of the two or three of the things I just wanted to pull up from that previous presentation, which I think were outstanding. One is that security is not just about people, or sorry, not just about technology, it's about people. Or as I like to say it, but I'm not allowed to patent it, as any fool can buy a tool, but not everybody can build a program, right? So it's around people. One of the second ones is that you're never going to get risk down to zero. And the third is speaking in the language of those that have the checkbook and the biggest issue, right? So you need to be able to tune your message. Some of those are in and out of here, and I just want to make sure that you caught from that one because it was fantastic. But it's pervasive. It's not just his opinion. It is the challenges we have today. So I'm going to go through a little bit of introduction and background of what I'm talking about and why. I want to set the stage a little bit for two distinct topics, culture, process, as well as what a data-driven future looks like. Everybody wants AI, but AI starves if it doesn't have data, right? So we're seeing a pivot to AI. We're seeing a pivot to less people, but we're also seeing a pivot to more automation. And I hopefully tie those together a little bit in here. If we have some time, we're a little bit late, as I'd heard. If we have some time, I do have a couple of bonus slides. Anyone, an OEM supplying into the supply chain, and this too is an issue for you, not directly, but indirectly? One of you? Okay. That's a really big deal right now. We got a lot of stuff in here that applies. And if maybe not for this group, I'm happy to have a quick chat on the side if you'd like. We presented the same thing in ManuSec Europe, which was in Munich about a month ago, where it's a really big deal. And we're going to Hanover Messe next week, where again, it's a really big deal. All the workshops and breakouts are not only how is secure by design, but how does that fit in the supply chain? I digress. I'm going to go through these. Okay, so I've been practicing in OT security for since 2001, as have many of our end users and people I've worked with and around and et cetera. In 2003, NERC CIP and North American Power was first to formally execute. Everyone familiar with NERC CIP, or at least to basics? Yeah. So it really was the first, like, let's take IT type of discipline and put it into an OT space. Going first is its benefits. They kind of could pick their poison. The downside is that they argued a lot of the way along what to say and how to say it. But I'm using some of that as the background, not because it's power or because it's North America, but because the underlying challenges are philosophical, cultural, and through technology, automation, and empowering your people. And what have we learned? It absolutely has to be treated like a program, not a task, right? The analogy has been overdone. You know, security needs to be by like safety. I've even said when I drive up to a facility and I don't just see so many days since a safety incident, I see so many days since a cyber incident, we will have fully arrived. But that may not happen. However, we need to get there. I do have an example in here called Duke. It's publicly available. I'm not trashing anybody, and I don't like FUD. The fourth point that the previous speaker talked about was don't come in with super scary stuff, right? But at the same time, there is a warning to be gained from talking to these people who've been trying this for 20 years, right? And some of these challenges from their origin was around trying to start to put this stuff in what was still a pretty immature OT space, where we're slapping IT stuff into OT to make things better and faster. And yeah, Ethernet's going to solve everything until you don't know what you're doing and you design a BGP packet that gets denied at any brand new 3-com switch that you have to make dumb as hell to make it work, right? So there was a clash there where we're putting IT into OT, and we're sort of growing from that. First gen tools, I used to call them, but we'll walk through all that. So who knows the children's book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie? Everyone familiar? The basic premise here is that, and I've seen this a lot in the OEM space, a lot of OEM manufacturers looking at this too are saying, here's my immediate problem. I'm going to solve this, and then I'm going to solve the next problem, and then the next problem. What that usually means is disjointed, individual, stood up at different times in a linear fashion, either technologies or processes or checkboxes, which as you get down the road really becomes a house of cards. One of the other things that last session was so popular about was people. We don't have the people. We need to build the process. We need to enable what people we have. We need to make our people more efficient. And if we don't have a way to do that, as you go from giving the mouse the cookie to giving it milk to giving it a mirror to giving it a comb, you will find that you fall down pretty quickly. Automation and data aggregation are the two biggest underlying things for generational maturation. If you don't need to believe me, This is the one I said I was going to throw up there. So there are references in here. You guys can have the deck after. That is the fine is a public reference to what exactly I'm talking about. Duke Energy, and whenever I went to trade shows in NERC early days, there were two groups in the room. There was a group that said, we did this at all our substations, or we did this all at our pump or lift stations, or what have you. We did this at all on all of our production lines in the bakery. Not for NERC, but they were taking the philosophy, embracing it, and making it a better environment, making it a better program. The other group were saying, wait a minute. Of all your assets in scope, how'd you decide which ones you had to do this and which ones you could ignore? Right? The prevalence of data diodes in NERC because that avoided the external routable protocol, which is a clause in CIP 5, now is all being undone because you broke historians and data analysis and secure remote access and sharing with experts. So be careful when you're doing these, what you're looking to the future. Now, Duke, you can see this, the quote right there, the third bullet, the 127 security violations, blah, 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 lack of managed oversight, process deficiencies, inadequate training, and lack of internal controls. That means systemic failure. Every process, every site, every reporting requirement. Who knows what the record fine was? $10 million negotiated single fine, nuke the program, build it up again from scratch. Again, I'm not selling security on fear. This is a worst case scenario. If you're expected to do something and your company is up against regulatory fines and regulatory pressure and board oversight, we better build a sustainable, repeatable program, not just a checklist that gets us out of trouble until next week, right? That's what I'm trying to say here. You need to build a program. It has to be sustainable. It has to be built in everything. I would love to go to technical schools where a lot of people learn networking and PLC program and instrumentation. And if you're in a blue collar thing, you have safety as your first 30 hours and you have safety as a part of every other program and project for the 2 to 4 years you're there. Cyber should be that on all coding and development, etc. But I'm fully on my soapbox. It's not even lunch yet. Let me back off. So what is security? It's a function of protecting assets from electronic harm or failure, intentional or otherwise. Why do I put that in there? Everybody always asks me how many cyber incidents in OT. I will tell you, I could throw in a number and it'll be wrong. I mean, 27% of stats are made up on the spot, right? Anyways, but the point is that most OT incidents are either not reported or not properly classified as cyber because OT is get back up and running as fast as you can. Rebuild, refresh, get going. Do we stand around and do forensics or analysis? Sometimes, and we're getting there. We will, hopefully, but not yet. It's a program, not a piece of software or hardware. Its intent needs to be baked into every aspect of daily operations. Properly executed, you get everything that you're supposed to do as an operator of a facility. Uptime, resiliency, safety, availability, throughput. Not defeat the hacker, defeat the bad guy. I mean, that's in there. Not get it to zero, as the previous spoker said, but actually keep it where it needs to be. It is people executing established process enabled by technology. Do not lead with technology. Okay, why is this such a challenge? This, if you've seen any of my speaking in the last couple of years, is the ISA 99 patch urgency decision tree. Yes, made up by engineers. That's who got to label it, do the marketing. Anybody seen this before? It's part of the ISA 99. A couple of you? Yeah. Bunch of OT security practitioners got together and said, well, how can we help build a guideline to help people patch in OT? And they wanted to first understand what the challenge is. You see on the left-hand side, I'll just quickly go through. Identify vuln and patch. Does it affect ICS? No. What do? Back to work. We accumulate more technical debt. If it does affect ICS, but there's a workaround, what do? Document. Well, go back to work. It's only when it might affect that we need to understand is operational risk, operational needs higher than risk. Well, to do that, go up to these two big boxes. The stuff on the left comes standard. You could buy any vuln tool, and you could see how many vulns you have by criticality and severity and attack vector, and if it's going to take a complete loss of availability to the system or confidentiality of the data or what have you. Can you tie it to the right box? Impact to business needs and operations. I bet you the guys and girls in the plant know which systems are going to make them cancel their weekend plans. But is that baked into your risk analysis? That's where we need to get to. Now, what happened a lot in the NERC days was people started in looking at the tree in front of them, like I said, and not the forest. I need an inventory, right? It's the basis of everything. Who knows what their inventory is today? No, actually, what would you like to define in your inventory? IP, MAC address, OS, software, maybe firmware manufacturer, anything else? NERC SIP says you have to tell me if it has an operational impact for 10 minutes or less to what your function is on the grid. What about ownership? Do all of you do all of your own work, or some of you skate a long haul where you have to have contractors all the way down the long geographic distributions? Who do you contact? Are they properly trained? What do you know about those people? Inventory has to be built with an eye towards the 177 requirements of NIST CSF or whatever you're trying to build to. You don't want to have to go back and do it again. Do you want to do it right, or do you want to do it twice? Okay. Vulnerability mapping. A lot of tools, especially when they come from IT, they're cheap and easy and free because they want to keep other people out. Here, we've already got this in the IT side. Take some free ones for the OT. They don't typically map Wonderware and Kiwi Syslog. They've never heard of those things, right? They have a good list of vulnerabilities, but they're IT applications. Asset impact or criticality, tribal knowledge, this absolutely has to come into this. The decision tree a moment ago about business ops, not only the asset's criticality, but what its function is in the ecosystem. One of the things we forget when we're talking about security and OT, yes, they're individual line items on your inventory, but they're not individual components. They are part of a system, which is part of a larger ecosystem. The number of times you want to do something, but first there's a precursor and a follow-on up and downstream in the supply chain has to be factored in. You need to have the ability to plan from a manufacturing perspective what you're doing, or if you're going to hold and accept the risk. Patching, and then backups. So what do we have there? 4 or 5 different tools for change management, database planning, etc. Well, the result of building individual silos is that they are very, very hard to navigate between. Understand how you navigate from one to the other, how you increase or decrease the value of what one system is telling you against the other. Going back to the example of being able to understand what I'm talking about between these disciplines. We have a mining client the other day got a notice from IT where IT does all the vulnerability watching, and they send out notices saying, oh, by the way, we found one that you have, super critical. You got the 3 days to fix it. Good luck. So they started to plan an outage. It's going to be a big deal, a big mine processing facility, millions of dollars per 2 to 3 day outage. And they dispatched somebody to go figure out which system it was while they started to do the planning and the notification, the communications and the shift scheduling and all that other stuff. Found out that the system that had the vulnerability was a printer. They could unplug it and route to the secondary printer, which is a different vintage and didn't have the vuln, right? So very, very big difference, right? If you understand what you're talking about. And in that case, you have to be able to navigate. That's a very poignant example of one little snippet of, hey, here's a vuln without context that you now then to try and figure out. One of our midstream gas companies, 23,000 vulnerabilities at one site. Cool, hey? No. All he did was quantify what he already suspected. He can't get it to 0, and he's not going to start at number 1 and work his way through. We need to figure this out. So what are we seeing in the future? Asset inventory, back to my earlier comment, is about so much more than just an inventory. We need to know automated asset. We want to automate the asset updates, et cetera. But more importantly, inventory has multiple components, both around the technical endpoint, but how it fits in the ecosystem and how we fit it into our program. I'm not going to go through this in detail. Again, happy to share these things with you. This is what some of the leaders in advanced manufacturing, when I say advanced in the maturity around security, resiliency, uptime, et cetera, are using. They want to go far beyond simply a list of IPs. They want context. Obsolescence. How many people know what they have for out of compliance or out of support systems? Yeah, pretty good. Excellent. Reporting, leadership, and compliance. We're going to go to the board. We're going to sell them something. We better show that we had an impact. 10 minutes? Okay. I've only got 24 more slides. Patching, configuration, risk reduction. Just kidding. How do we get there? This is what the leaders are doing. There's some of you in this room today that are doing it. I keep asking you to come speak publicly so you believe the end user, not me, but corporate restrictions, I get it. The asset has to be the foundation. It's what we're building around, but it's not where you stop, right? The asset is the core record. You need an asset-based database. You can't use something that else is fit for some other purpose and try to append things onto it. We were asked once to take our data and shove it into an IT-provided vulnerability tool. They don't have the back end to support multiple fields on an asset record. They have transactional. That's fine. That's what they're built for. But you need to know where you're trying to get to. You start with the asset. Everything we can know about it. PLCs, relays, controllers, nested PLCs, head-end modems that have multiple downstream I/O. You name it. We need as much as we can get. Then you go gather that tribal knowledge. Now, sometimes this exists in a Maximo system or in a HasOps, or you maybe just need to pull your engineers, or maybe you work with your vendor that's been in manufacturing for 120 years, and they say, well, usually these are pretty critical, and we understand the process, et cetera. At the end of the day, We want to know what that asset is and what it means to us if it goes away. Conversely, if I do need to test something, I don't want to test on the crown jewels, and I don't want to do everything all at once in one day. I want a stage where I test what I protect more than others, etc., all the way through to backup, disaster recovery, business continuity. We're not giving everything a full daily backup and a weekly offsite. That's just too onerous, but we need to know where would you pick and choose those methods. Third thing, let's go to the wild. There's lots of people researching all the known vulnerabilities, all the known exploits, threat data, available patches, product notices from Rockwell. What's your key position switch? Read or write? We want to know those. We want to map them against this. So now we're building, you see, a multi-dimensional model, which AI geeks love, right? Because I'm building data. And I'm building a much better context about that asset than if I simply give you an inventory. Finally, layers of defense. Friends in the other room that we integrate with to be able to say, well, you know what, we've done all this stuff. Well, what's Factory Talk telling me about my ladder logic check-in? What's Acronis telling me about whether that backup actually ran last night? What's CrowdStrike telling me about the version and status of my EDR? You need those to prevent or at least temper the score that you get from the raw risk that you start with. You then get to pick your risk factors. The one point about show mastery. Some organizations have, above all else, protect the brand or revenue. Or maybe we have a global map of all our sites and they're color-coded, gold, silver, and bronze to represent revenue relative to each other by region. Maybe it's the criticality of the system to a safety perspective. Maybe it's the obsolescence of the system. Maybe it's where it is in the Purdue model. Maybe where it's a facility that has lots of secure remote access or remote vendors supporting it because of the age and vintage, etc. You pick your factors, you weight your factors, and now you're having empirical discussions with management as to what to do and where to do it. You can even build thresholds for how fast you need to act. But because I've only got a couple minutes, I want to skip ahead. It's what we call contextual risk score. And I want to walk through the myriad of opportunities it provides you. Again, if you get behind this and build it as a culture, you can now pivot to anything. It's about building the pedigree into your approach so you're not just crossing a box or checking a box. Starting from the right, these are resulting benefits for regulatory reporting and other tasks. Outcomes, you can now see contextual risk by site, production area, production line within the production area, particular assets, by vendor, by function. We have a client that globally just categorizes 3 different types of business in the boom factor, quite frankly. Air separation into oxygen, no big deal. Hydrogen into a refinery, well, that's higher stakes, right? You can also see the causes. Is it end of life or obsolescence? Another one of our mining clients got mad that we couldn't connect to a particular type of PLC. When we did a little bit of research, 3 engineers built that particular PLC. 2 of them are retired, 1 is dead. The documentation is only on paper. Predates electronic tracking. I can show your obsolescence. And what does that mean to your impact in your next capital budget? Vuln, patching, configuration, user software, whatever. What about if you're preparing for digital enhancements? That's where AI loves to go. What if you're trying to do it on leaky old servers that hard drives are filling up and failing? Or network segments that are overrun? Actions then allow you to come short, medium, and long term. And by the way, if you have data, here's the really cool part about this method. Because I'm going to go get that data from, build that data model, then get those different data sources and say, here's the action we now need to take. I can see this globally where we need to take action. And as we take actions, whether that's through technology or whether that's through capital upgrade projects or whether that's through people running around facilities, turning that key position from write to read, it feeds back up into the dashboard. So what do I see? A trend of my risk reduction, impact for the investment, return on investment. If you want to keep going back to the board and getting more money in subsequent years and get better and better, start with your risk. Don't try to boil the ocean. Start with something reasonable. Once you start to get that pretty consistently, let's level up. Let's see where we can go. Conversely, can also show when we've had critical vulns that we've known about and patches available for more than 6 months on critical systems. What's breaking down? How do we educate? Do we need to take an outage? But in all cases, we're agreeing, IT and OT and corporate boards, regulators, whatever, here's our risk profile, here's what we're going to do, and here's what we're going to live with. It changes the game significantly. 5 key components, inventory and visibility with an eye towards multiple disciplines. You have to build this right. It's the foundation. It becomes a house of cards if you're going to build other things on top of it. Vulnerability identification in context. You can then prioritize risk, which leads to governance and processes, how fast we go, how far we go, when we start, when we stop, under what circumstances. And that helps to drive a significant amount of communication and culture, back to the previous speaker, in building empowerment, enablement, and showing people career paths. So what does success look like? Exactly what I mentioned. Started with a few thousand assets, now has many assets. Started with a high risk score, has reduced it significantly. Started with not sure what we have, to proactively planning capital budgets with the board. They're leading, in my opinion, manufacturing from whack-a-mole and react to proact and starting to drive their own bus. So, in summary, I think I'm pretty close. Not sure where the timer is. I'll leave time for a couple questions. A regulatory, corporate, board, best-in-class, post-issue, best met with a programmatic mindset and approach. And remember, some of the calculations around downtime and cost avoidance, if you're a big manufacturer of products, the Clorox issue wasn't just about how much time they were out, how much productivity they lost. It's about losing shelf space at Walmart, right? Like there's a huge cost to brand and recognition in future. Regulations today are a starting point, not a simpler defined task you must execute and move on. Winners will understand the future need and evolve to the fluid needs, but based on automated, aggregated data. It's about context. We'll never get to zero, but where are we truly and which direction are we going? Okay. Data is key to success. Automatic updates. It's a continuous feedback loop. We're in process control. We live and die by that. Why wouldn't we build that for this too? Okay. And contextual data for situational risk is the most important tool. I did have those 2 bonus slides for OEMs, but I'm going to pause those for questions. And if you did want to stop by, lunch is soon. I can have a chat with you if you'd like. And that's it for now. There's my contact information. I am a Canadian from Western Canada. We do have a local here, but we also are worldwide. So if you want to talk about anything,